Today, I'm going to talk about 4 random college football players and what happened to them. It just so happens that all 4 of them will be running backs, and if you have a player you want me to do in my next video like this, be sure to take a moment and drop it down in the comment section. Also, don't forget to subscribe before we get started, and now let's get into today's video. So in case you're wondering how I come up with these videos, I literally just think of 4 random college football players. That's all there is to it, and the first one we're going to talk about is Paul Perkins. Paul has a great story as he was born in Arizona, and he had a brother named Bryce. Maybe you know Bryce Perkins. He was a star quarterback for Virginia and led them to one of the best years in school history, and he was also a big name on the recruiting scene. Switching over to Paul though, he grew up and eventually got to Chandler High School. He played alongside his childhood best friend Brett Hundley, and both of them would decide to go to the same school. Perkins was a pretty big deal, but he wasn't exactly the top player in his class. He was a 3-star recruit, the number 48 athlete, and the 690th best player in the class of 2012. When Perkins arrived at UCLA, he would decide to redshirt. In 2013, he actually became the starting running back after the starter would go down with an ankle injury. As the starting back, he rushed for 573 yards and 6 touchdowns and was also a threat in the backfield. In 2014, he once again had a pivotal role at the offense as he had a career game and a win over Texas and finished the year with 1,572 yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. He was one of the top returning running backs in the country, and he would have a big senior year. In 2015, he'd rushed for 1,343 yards and 14 touchdowns, and because of that, he was named a second-team All-Pac-12 selection. After a great 3-year career, he declared for the 2016 NFL Draft, and he was a mid-round pick. He was selected in the 5th round by the New York Giants with the 149th overall pick, and he would enter the year as the 4th-string running back. Sadly for him, he never really got going in the NFL. For the most part, after an okay first few years with the Giants, he spent time with the Lions, Jaguars, Ravens, and Colts, and never got an opportunity. Paul Perkins is one of those names that you likely remember, and when I think of UCLA running backs, he's the first guy who comes to mind. The next guy I'm going to talk about is a running back who was a huge deal coming out of high school, and Kyle Porter is the subject of today's. He actually grew up in the state of Texas, which is obviously a huge deal when it comes to high school football, and he became a superstar when he was at Katy High School. He was named an All-American and an All-State player, as he actually led the team to 4 straight state title games. Because of that, he became a huge recruit and would have the opportunity to practically go wherever he wanted to. He decided to stay home and commit to the Texas Longhorns, and he was a big deal. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 4-star recruit, the number 11 running back, and a top 300 player in the class of 2016. Sadly, things would never really get going for him, as he did have somewhat of a role his freshman year. He ran for 200 yards without a touchdown, and then in 2017, he actually had a pretty respectable year. He finished the year with 261 yards and 4 touchdowns, and had a pretty promising future with the team. Sadly though, after only 1 game in 2018, he would be on the move. He would transfer across the state and down a level as he would settle on the Houston Cougars. In 2019, he would make 9 starts at running back, and he ran for 615 yards. Not only that, but he also finished the year with 3 touchdowns and became the premier back for the Cougars. In 2020, he returned, and many expected him to be one of the top backs in the American Conference, and you could say it was alright. He helped lead Houston to a bowl game and finished the year at 424 yards and 4 touchdowns. In his entire 5-year career, Porter ran for 1,509 yards and 12 touchdowns, and you could theoretically say he had a disappointing college career compared to the hype. Well, he would enter the 2021 NFL Draft, but as I surf the internet for information, I can't really find anything, so it doesn't seem like he's in the NFL. He's likely headed in a different direction, and Porter is the kind of guy I want to do a video on in the future. The next guy we're going to talk about is a South Carolina Gamecock. That is where my mom went to school, so South Carolina was a team I always paid attention to when I first got into college football. The first big running back I really remember outside of Marcus Lattimore was Brandon Wilds. Coming out of Blythewood High School in Blythewood, South Carolina, Wilds was an underrated recruit. He was only a 3-star guy, and he wasn't even a top 1,000 player in the class of 2011. He ended up getting offers from ECU, Arkansas, Maryland, Illinois, and the Gamecocks, and he chose to go to South Carolina. He actually went into South Carolina as the 5th-string running back, but the 4 guys ahead of him would get injured. Most notably, Marcus Lattimore had that gruesome campaign, but Wilds got a chance to grow up early. He ran for 486 yards and 3 touchdowns as a freshman, and in 2012, when things were supposed to be great for him, he actually suffered a high ankle sprain and would miss the entire year. He'd once again be bothered by injuries in 2013, but he did finish with over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. In 2014, he rushed for 570 yards and 4 scores, and then he would come back in 2015 and once again rush for nearly 600 yards and 3 touchdowns. While he wasn't exactly a superstar by any means, Wilds was a consistent contributor for the Gamecocks for a couple years, and some of those years is when they were really good. Because of that, he was at least expected to make the NFL, and he was listed as the 29th best running back prospect. He ended up going undrafted in 2016, but was picked up by the Atlanta Falcons. From there, he would never really get a chance to play, as he would go from the Jets to the Browns to the Jaguars to the Cardinals to the 49ers, and then over to the XFL. As of 2020, he was up in the CFL, and the guy is still trying his best and is a fighter. I'm not quite sure why Brandon Wilds came to mind, but he was a pretty good back for the Gamecocks. The final guy on today's list had a pretty weird and up and down career. His name was Madre London. You probably remember him at Michigan State, but let's go back in time a little bit. He went to St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that school produces a ton of big-time talent. Coming out of high school, he was a high 3-star recruit and ended up deciding to go to Michigan State. He also had offers to schools such as Florida State, Wisconsin, Mississippi State, North Carolina, and Nebraska, but East Lansing is where he wanted to be. He would not play until 2015. He actually saw time in 11 games. He finished with 500 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns and showed a lot of hype and promise for the future. In 2016, he would fall off a little bit as he only ran for 120 yards, and not much would change in 2017. Because of that, he would decide to grad transfer to Tennessee. While he was expected to start, he kind of got buried on the depth chart. He finished his only year with the Volunteers with only 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and it seemed like the guy could never live up to the hype. During all 4 years, he always showed glimpses, but he could never quite put it all together, and he's just like the other 2 guys on the list before him. He still finished with over 1,100 yards in his college career, and to me, he was an impactful player. What's really crazy is he didn't end up going to the NFL or anything, but he actually went over to Europe. He became the MVP of the European League of Football, and in that 1 year, he actually ran for over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns in only 10 games. Obviously, London had the talent, and he just had to jump across the pond to put it all together. So yeah, in today's video, we talked about 4 former college football running backs. Perkins is really the only guy I would call a star, but the other 3 had long careers in college, and if you paid attention to college football, you likely knew their names. What did you guys think though? Who's a player I can include in my next video? What topic should I do next? And do you remember any of these 4 guys? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video. Subscribe if you are new here, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including part 1 and all the videos in this series. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.